Professor.
Good day, Francis.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so viewers, we have Professor Richard Leblanc on our show, and today I'm glad we have him to share some wonderful insights about entrepreneurship. Yes. Okay, Professor, let's get it rolling. Yes.
Hit me.
Can you tell me a bit about your business name?
So I've got an existing business
Okay.
that I do consulting mostly for entrepreneurs.
Wow.
I don't do a lot of it. I do a little bit of it. It's not a core business. I've been doing it for a very long time.
Okay.
But I do have some new ventures that I'm pursuing. One of them, I can't get too much specific because it's not officially launched yet.
Yeah.
There's this week will be kind of pivotal to it. I've been working on it for about 7 weeks now.
Okay.
And I've got a couple of meetings tomorrow that will enlighten it. So I think I will soft launch it
Great.
this weekend.
That's wonderful.
Okay, so and one of the reasons for that, I'm not trying to be cute, but one of the reasons for that is it's easy to false start, right, or stumble. So one of the areas of wisdom I've learned over the years is sometimes you just have to delay it a little bit. So I actually had to delay partly because I wanted to get some clarity about what I wanted to do and eliminate things that I didn't want to do.
Okay.
But I also, I tend to move fast and decisively, and not everyone can do that.
Wow.
So sometimes in this case, I've had to slow down a little bit so that others can kind of come to their own conclusions and run at their own pace. They're not going to overtake me,
Okay.
but I need them to kind of sort of catch up a little bit
Okay.
so that the launch is more successful.
Wow.
Yeah, so in this case, which is somewhat rare, I've applied more brake
Okay.
than gas,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In this particular instance. So it'll be imminent. It's in a space for students, not
Okay.
entirely students, but
Okay.
largely for students
Okay.
in terms of career readiness.
Wow.
So what I'm seeing is students many years even after they've graduated, finished the program,
Mhm.
not get good traction in terms of career. Right?
Okay.
And in fact, there are students that I taught 3 years ago here who've not even received an interview. So imagine going through. So clearly something they're doing is not right.
Okay.
And so the purpose of this is to get them up to speed. Much like the lecture we just had where I was talking
yeah.
about, sort of the cultural issues in
Exactly.
Canada
Yeah.
in terms of business and
Mhm.
networking
Mhm.
and these nuances that are hard to do. So, I always say if you don't know the game dynamics, you can never be successful at the game.
Wow.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
So purpose of this is to teach them better game dynamics.
Mhm.
It's quite direct,
Yeah.
and by that, so they can go to the marketplace and find people to help them write their resume. They can
Mhm.
find people to help them do a cover letter. They
Yeah.
can. There's all these sorts of resources,
Yeah.
but it doesn't actually teach them how to fish.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So they get dependent on
Dependent
others.
on them.
Right.
Okay.
So I want them to know how to fish.
Great.
The purpose of the program is not for them to be in it for a year or two,
Yeah.
and for us to make lots of money on it.
Okay.
They probably could do. We're probably going to offer something that could be a year long, where they can come back and refresh. We may not even do a lifetime membership type of a
Yeah.
model.
Okay.
That they can come and get refreshers, and we're going to add to the content, and it's going to get bigger, and so they're not eliminated from that necessarily.
Okay.
But one of the other things we want to do is part of it is me also determining who can get involved in what role, and to have a lot of the people I think participate in the program also
Yeah.
become perhaps employed by us
Wow.
to deliver it, right? So
Wow.
so the best thing
Mhm.
would be, you're in the program,
Yeah.
you learn these sorts of skills.
Yeah.
Maybe that helps you with your career or not, but we engage with you and you
Okay.
become a member of our team,
Okay.
right?
Great.
You've gone through the program,
Mhm.
and you're the head of creativity, or
Okay.
you're the head of technology,
Yeah.
or whatever, head of sales or something, and you have a role, and then you work with Paul, who's behind the camera. Hi, Paul.
Yeah.
And right, and you and then all of a sudden now you become a resource, right? Like, to me, that's more powerful.
Yeah.
You helping Paul
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
you know what I mean. Anyway, so
Exactly.
so that's a network, kind of this network effect, right? So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Anyways, I
That's
probably
wonderful.
rambled too long on that.
That's
Anyway,
great.
So
That's great.
hopefully we'll get through some of the other
Sure,
questions.
sure. And I know you've already run other projects before,
Yeah.
talking of your
Yeah.
hockey
Yeah.
project
Yeah.
and your health sector project, right?
Yeah. So I was an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur, I guess formally in terms
Yeah.
of actually, the transactional aspect
Mhm.
since 1994.
That's great.
Yeah,
I was
so-
young by then.
Yeah, you were pretty young. I was a lot younger too, But so I call that 30 years,
Yeah.
right? And a number of things, including helping other entrepreneurs. So even though I was doing that, I was actually doing quite a bit of what I would call turnaround work
Okay.
in Calgary mostly, not just Calgary, but and so that would just be me helping other people kind of figure out what they wanted to do, eliminate things. Some of them were public companies that were struggling, or private companies that wanted to go public,
Okay.
couldn't quite make it work.
Mhm.
And my skill set in that was curiosity.
Yeah.
It wasn't a deep skill set where I had this pedigree,
Yeah.
but I had the ability to ask questions, the ability to see things they couldn't see, and the ability, I think largely from my sports coaching background,
Okay.
to
great.
read human beings
Yeah.
and to be able to motivate human beings and
Yeah.
to teach human beings to improve.
Wow.
So I took the skills I learned in sports,
Mhm.
playing and coaching,
Mhm.
and I applied them to the business world. And I
That's
never,
awesome.
as I mentioned in class, never had a business card.
Yeah.
Lawyers would refer
Mhm.
me to other lawyers.
Yeah.
I was dealing with accounting firms, all the big accounting firms,
Great.
commissions, exchanges. It just kind of happened. It's just one of these things. I had a wide surface area for luck, and it just luck.
Yeah.
You know, I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
That's
just
great.
did it. You know what I mean?
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Sorry, Nike.
So,
I just
yeah.
stole your trademark.
Okay, I was even about to ask you about the background, how you were able to connect it, but it looks like you've really summarized it for me. Yeah.
Sorry,
That's
I
awesome.
okay.
Yeah, so
That's
what
my
I will
hard
actually ask again is like, growing up as an entrepreneur, what are some of the challenges that you've come in contact with and how you were
Yeah.
able to mitigate them?
So I think the biggest thing, the hardest thing to navigate as an entrepreneur, is this attempt to balance the pursuit of the business,
Mhm.
because that is an all-in thing, and the pursuit of all things non-business.
Okay.
So those things can be, family and community.
Yeah.
I worked hard at both. If I had to make a confession, I don't think I gave the full entrepreneurial journey everything it had, because I had a young family. That was difficult. My
Okay.
ex-wife was an entrepreneur. So we
Okay.
had two entrepreneurs in the family. That's difficult at times. You're sometimes high, sometimes low.
Yeah.
Difficult to navigate. But at the same time, raised three great kids. The family turned out well, and the kids are well equipped,
Yeah.
right? So those investments, will pay off for my children. And now, my fire still burns hot. So despite getting
Yeah.
older,
Yeah.
it's still there,
You are not
and I
getting
can't
older.
deny it.
You're actually getting younger.
Yeah, maybe I'm getting. Maybe it is that moment. But I think the real thing is that if those embers really truly burn,
Yeah.
you can't deny them,
Exactly.
right? So
Yeah, that's true.
so my exit strategy is death. How do I stop being an entrepreneur? I'm no longer here. As long as I can do it, I'm going to keep doing it. And
That's
maybe I've got another 20 or 30 years. I don't know. You just never know, right? But there's entrepreneurs working into their 80s and 90s,
Yeah.
and they just stop when they're no longer
Okay,
here.
so mostly there is this question that most up and coming entrepreneurs do ask: how do I get my business funded? I'm not having the money,
Yeah.
banks are not financing. So with over 30 years experience as an entrepreneur, what do you think are some of the ways that you will be able to fund your business as an up and coming entrepreneur? And personally, how did you fund your business?
Yeah.
Starting a business by then.
Yeah, it's a critical question, and I think raising money is the hardest thing in the world to do.
Okay.
The hardest thing.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong time to do it.
Yeah.
you can only connect the dots looking back, to quote Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
So you're kind of doing it on the come. I think a lot of companies, they look at finance as kind of the goal, but that really isn't the case.
Okay.
There's an old saying that, and I'm not sure I 100% agree with it, but I can largely agree with it, and that, startups fail because they run out of money.
Mm-hmm.
There's some truth to that, but I think it's more true that startups fail because they don't know what they really need to do, and they waste a lot of resources, including money, but not just money.
Okay.
So yeah, finance is critical. The best of all worlds is to bootstrap and to do it organically.
Okay.
In today's age, that's more doable than it was before.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a nice advantage that the current crop of entrepreneurs that are coming up don't have to face. But sooner or later, you have to get capital from somewhere.
Yeah.
Especially if you have to scale, it can be quite difficult, not impossible, difficult. And I think it's even harder in Canada because our capital regime is quite immature and infantile. It's too small. So if you're a Canadian company and you need to raise capital, I mean, the truth is you have to go to the United States, right? You have to raise money stateside. There's just not enough money in Canada, not enough interest. It's a common problem that's not gone away for decades. I don't see it going away anytime soon. So I guess you have to, I think the best way to sell is to be genuine on what you do.
Okay.
Yes, the pitch is for the money, but it's like class, right? What's the value you're bringing to the investor?
Okay.
The tricky part, and no one tells you this, particularly if you're dealing with venture capitalists and others, is the minute you take that money, you're on that curve now. And you're off the curve you were before. So I think that's if I had to give someone advice, is be careful who you receive money from. Right?
Yeah.
When, of course, under what terms, those are sort of the details you'll have to work out. Some are good, some are bad.
Yeah.
But you're immediately on some sort of exit pathway because that investor only wants to be invested in you for a short period of time. There are rare circumstances where that's not the case, but that would be rare. I wouldn't raise money thinking that's going to be you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So yeah, how you get good at it, practice, and I think there's really no rules of thumb. I've taught new venture finance courses all over the place. I've raised capital, but I'll give you a good example without naming names. So one of my best friends did a startup in Canada many years ago. He took it stateside many years ago. In the course of, I can't remember the exact time, I'm going to say roughly 12 years. He did, I think it was 54 rounds of financing, of raising money, and $56 million.
Wow.
He was in the financing business. He wasn't in the raising or the developing his business. He was just raising money to move the business. When all was said and done, and he exited the company, and it took about 12 to 14 years for him to do all that, raise all that money, he got diluted.
Wow.
He walked out with $27,000 US in his pocket in 14 years, $2,000 a year. It wasn't worth it.
Wow.
So you hear the good stories.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about the bodies in the cemetery, right?
Yes.
And that's the real truth.
Great. Wow.
Yeah.
Very powerful insight. Yeah. So, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur, and what will you do differently if you are to start all over again?
I think the biggest lesson is be careful who you let in the canoe.
Wow.
Be careful who you let in the canoe, who you hire, who you work with.
Okay.
If it's a co-founder, be very careful.
Okay.
A lot of people say they're founders and co-founders. They don't have the aptitude. They don't have the attitude. They don't have the experience. It's they learned it in a book, or they hear stories, or they went to a session, or they listened to a course like mine, and that's not it, right? So I think be super selective. Brad Jacobs had a quote that better an empty seat than a bad hire. So not only who you get in through your first, like your 5 key hires, but also every time you bring someone in to be involved in that process and make sure that they're going to be loyal to the mission. Versus loyal to this is an opportunity for me to do something else. That's going to happen. I'm not saying that's to be expected. But be very selective. You know, I think a Navy SEALs mentality, small groups of 5 with another group, like that's better than building this massive sort of employment agency. People get confused that, oh, the number of people who work at my startup is an indicator of success. It's usually not, okay? And get the best of the best. If you can select only 8 players, have a high standard. And that standard, here's the crazy thing about that standard. Just think about it. If most people out there in startups or people out in the world, I mean by definition, are average or mediocre, like just okay, and you can elevate the level of your hire, that competitive advantage isn't just this much; it's exponentially that much. It's so much higher, right? It's like a standard deviation of 4 or 5 or 6. Like it's just so rare. Seek that out. Pay them well. Reward them handsomely, and you know, quite often 10 people can do the job of 1,000 if you have those right people. You know, Bill Gates said, if you want something difficult to be done, give it to a busy person. They'll find a way to do it easily, where someone who's not busy will just kind of mess around, right? Not even get the job done. So I think that would be my biggest learning.
Wow. So finally, what would be your advice to young and up-and-coming entrepreneurs?
My advice would be audacious. Just do it well, differentiate, be bold, be courageous, be fearless. I mean, you're gonna, like, there's gonna be more challenges. You know, every successful entrepreneur they talk about these days, high sort of celebrity level, like NVIDIA, right? So Jason talks about all these kinds of things, and he had an interview a few months ago and admitted, like many have, that if he realized how difficult it was, he never would have started. I mean, you can't imagine the degree of difficulty. It's not even possible. And so what? I mean, right? It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard, more difficult than you can ever imagine. And it's kind of like the James Cameron thing. I run too difficult. He makes these exceptional films because he's the only person who has the courage, the audacity, and the tenacity to do it. So I think that's what I would say. If you're out there thinking of doing something, do it. What's the worst that can go wrong? Lots. But a lot of things can go right, and dare to do it. And most people don't do it because they don't dare.
Great. That's been a wonderful session. We'll tell our audience finally any advertisement about your business. Is there anything?
Stay tuned. That's all I can say at the moment.
Okay, that's great. All right, Professor. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, Francis. Thank you for asking. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, bye.